Hey, what's up, guys? Hunter, owner of Llama Wood here. We're an on-demand firewood marketplace. We've delivered kiln-dried firewood to thousands of home and business owners, and today I want to talk about the best firewood to burn, which is a big topic. And really, the way you have to think about it is, what are you trying to optimize for? Are you trying to heat your house with a wood-burning stove, or are you just trying to enjoy a fire on a rainy night while you watch some Netflix? Are you trying to smoke a delicious Texas style brisket? Or are you cuddling up to a campfire after a long day's hike in a sleeping bag? Okay, so you've got all these different scenarios. For simplicity's sake, we are just going to assume we're talking about fires in an indoor fireplace or in an outdoor fire pit, because we can't cover all the scenarios. And those two, indoor fireplace and outdoor fire pit, would cover probably 99% of the use cases out there. And so that's what we'll go with. Sound good? Cool. All right. Before we get into the breakdown of what makes firewood, what makes the best wood to burn, we're going to talk about a couple of terms. We're just going to clarify what I mean by various terms so that we're all on the same page. There are two types of trees that make firewood. There are hardwood trees and softwood trees. Hardwood, often called deciduous trees, are trees that basically drop their leaves once a year in the fall when they're fully grown and fully mature. Some common examples of that are like chestnut, oak, hickory, maple, cherry, etc. Softwoods or coniferous trees are characterized by the fact that they have these little woody cones like pine cones, and some common softwoods: pine, juniper, and cedar. So you've got hardwood firewood and softwood firewood. Okay. Now, there are two types of moisture levels, broadly speaking, of firewood. There is wet or green wood, and there is dry wood. Okay, there are two types of ways to dry wood. There is air drying and there is kiln drying. Air drying is often referred to as seasoning, or air dried wood is seasoned wood. And that means that the wood has been split, hopefully, and left outside for up to 2 years to dry. And often it's uncovered. Sometimes it's covered. It's better if it's covered, but it doesn't have to be. And so the word seasoned or seasoning comes from the fact that that wood is just left outside for many seasons. And then kiln drying is firewood that is chopped and put into a big oven called a kiln. Kiln drying is a form of heat treatment, but not all heat treatment is kiln drying. So they're kind of confusing. The state regulations and the USD regulations around firewood production refer to heat treatment specifications to certify firewood is per a state or federal regulation. But for the most part, if you go to the store or if you go online to buy firewood, you're going to see the term kiln-dried firewood versus heat-treated firewood. So for purposes of this video, we'll refer to kiln-dried wood as firewood that is put into a kiln and heat-treated in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Now, in any fire, there are two types of firewood, really. Or there are two different sizes of firewood. There are logs, which are bigger, taller, wider, and longer. And there are kindling firewood, which are often smaller and shorter. So length, width, height, etc. Smaller in all directions for kindling as it is versus logs. Okay. So, one last thing. All the stuff that we're referring to, all the firewood that we're talking about here is firewood that is cut from tree trunks, basically, by a chainsaw cuts up a tree trunk and then into 16 to 24 inch segments, and then that wood is split with either a wood splitter or hand split with an axe. This can be done by anybody in their own backyard, or it can be all fully automated by a firewood processor with in-feeds and clamps and hydraulic saws and joysticks and laser measured cuts. So broadly speaking, this firewood we're talking about is firewood that is cut from trees and split on some type of splitter. Okay, so now we can finally get started. All right, so if we're looking at recommending the best type of kindling Kindling, again, is the smaller stuff that you're going to use to get the fire started. I would recommend something called fatwood, which is it's a softwood pine that is saturated or impregnated with resin, and so it lights up really quickly, and it only takes a couple of little sticks of this to get the fire going. It worked great. It's organic. It's all natural. It works great in your indoor fireplace and your outdoor fire pit. However, if you're using these indoors, in your indoor fire pit, in your indoor fireplace, just use them in moderation. You don't need very many, especially if your wood is dry. More on that later. But they do put off soot and creosote because they're a softwood. So just use in moderation, but they're totally safe for any fireplace, and they're great starters. I use them myself on every fire that I make in my indoor fireplace. If you're not interested in buying fat wood, because I have never heard of anybody making their own fat wood, it would be a fun project to dig into, but for now, I buy it. If you don't want to buy it, that's totally cool. You can make your own kindling out of softwood. Just go cut down some pine branches and split them up, or just go out to your firewood pile if you're buying all hardwoods. More on that later. And then use something that I've made a couple of videos about called the kindling cracker to crack your own kindling. If you don't feel like buying a kindling cracker, you can just use an axe or a hatchet, whatever. Just chop it down into little pieces like this. Actually, it doesn't, this is super short. A typical firewood log is, like I said, 16 to 24 inches. So it's okay to be longer, but you do want to have the width and the height pretty small, so that the goal of kindling is just for it to light really quickly and put off a lot of heat to get your fire going. They're not intended to simmer away and heat your house. Just try to get a lot of heat going in the early stages of the fire, so you start combusting the other firewood logs. So on that, we're going to move on to the firewood logs, which is arguably the most important part of the fire and the purpose of this video. So we're going to talk about broad recommendations, and then I'll give the winner at the end, because as I like to say, there always has to be a winner. First of all is the type of tree. We talked about hardwoods and softwoods earlier. I recommend using hardwoods as your firewood. Okay, hardwoods, again, are things like oak, hickory, chestnut, maple, poplar, etc. The beauty of hardwoods is that they are dense and they have high heating value, but there is a range of densities. So you don't... Hello? We're back. Okay. The beauty of a hardwood is that there are various densities, and if you're trying to get your fire going, you might want to throw on a couple of lighter, less dense hardwoods like poplar, just to really get that fire going with those fatwood poplar. Boom, you're going to have a very fast fire. And then once you get that going, you have some nice hot coals in your fireplace. Then you can throw in something bigger, more dense, but with a high heating value like oak, and that would put out a low flame and high heat, and so those are great for just keeping your fire going all night. But you can also, if they're dry and they're sized correctly, you can always throw on 4 or 5 and get tons of heat producing from your fire as well. So you can kind of mix and match hardwoods based on the goal of the particular point in time of that fire. And now I can already hear people out there, what about softwoods? I was just on the phone with somebody who loves to burn softwoods in their fire pit. Well, so softwoods have a great advantage in that they light quickly. Like some of these softwoods, like cedar, you can basically chop a tree down and light the wood. Pine, you can almost light it immediately upon felling it. So they burn quickly, they burn hot. However, there are 2 major drawbacks to softwoods that to me are just non-starters. Number 1 is they put out a ton of creosote and soot, so they're bad for the environment and they're bad for your chimney. And 2 is if you're inside or outside and you burn some of these softwoods, like pine, for example, they put out these like little white snowflake ashy things that would go up in your chimney, or if you're sitting around a fire pit, They will go up and then they will basically like rain down on you. And who wants to get rained on by ash snowflakes? Not me. Okay, so I basically would never use softwood for both of those reasons, even though it does burn quickly and it burns hot. But to each his own. I'm just saying, I wouldn't do it. Okay. Next is the moisture level. So I recommend using very dry logs. There is nothing more frustrating than trying to light wet wood. Not only is it bad for the environment, it puts off a lot of smoke, it hisses, it steams, but most importantly is you don't actually have a fire. You can struggle all night with wet wood and be very frustrated and have all sorts of back pain from bending over and poking your fire all night long. So we don't even mess with that. Super dry logs, okay? End of discussion. Dry logs burn hotter, cleaner, and greener, okay? You want to burn wood that is lower than 25% moisture content, ideally lower than 20%. And the best way to get that is to buy kiln dried wood. Kiln dried or heat treated wood will come in somewhere between 10 and 20%. Seasoned wood you can get to 10 and 20%, but it takes years, and often the wood that we're buying online has not been seasoned that long, especially when you get late into the season or early into the new year. A lot of people have run out of seasoned wood. Probably not going to be getting very dry wood if you're buying seasoned wood sort of late into the year, maybe early on, early fall. And so that brings us to kiln dried wood, which has, if you're looking at like state regulations, USDA regulations, they have specific standards that you have to adhere to in order to sell wood as heat treated or kiln dried and to move it across state lines. So there are very clear requirements for how to kiln dry wood or how to heat treat wood. And what that does is it produces a consistently dry log every time. So there's nothing inherently wrong with seasoned wood. It's just that it's much harder to control the quality. So I stick to kiln dried wood if I'm looking for a very dry log. The next thing up is size. And in the firewood world, size matters. So when we're looking at firewood logs, I like a log that is about 3 inches in width, 3 inches in height, and about 16 inches in length. This happens to be a seasoned log that I am holding here, but it was a good representation of the size of the log that I like to burn. And the reason for that is that it's enough size to throw a log in and have it kind of slowly burn and keep your fire going when you don't want a rager, but it's also small enough to where you could throw on 4 or 5 of those logs and really get a ton of flame and a ton of heat output without smothering the fire. But also, in 99.9% of modern fireplaces and fire pits, that size is going to work. I've put logs of that size in all sorts of smokeless fire pits, wood burning fireplace inserts, masonry fireplaces, homemade pizza ovens. And like I said, we've delivered to thousands of restaurants and homes and events spaces that have used those same sized logs in hundreds of different applications. And in all of those deliveries, we only get a handful of requests for custom length. It's often folks asking us for logs that are much longer than 16 inches or logs that are like 8 inches. So much shorter or much longer. That little sweet spot of 16 inches is perfect for 99.9% of the use cases. And another thing is you want to get logs that have a uniform thickness, a uniform length. Logs are going to vary in diameter, width, and width and height. But if you have them all of the same length, then when you put them on your rack, they're all going to stack nicely. They're going to be flush with the wall you put them up against, or when you're looking at the rack, you're just going to see a smooth line of wood versus a bunch of jagged logs sticking in and out. And I just so happen to have one of our new products, a biodegradable wrapper on our bundles, but you can see that all of these logs come in at exactly the same length because they're cut on a processor that automates everything, laser cut, so you're getting standard lengths on every piece. And that makes for a good bundle, makes for a good rack of wood, and makes for a happy customer. So, with all of that said, and without further ado, I am going to announce the winner. The winner is Super Dry Oak. Coming in at about 15% moisture content and 3 inches in width, 3 inches in height, and 16 inches in length. Okay. Truth be told, I actually wouldn't pick just one. I would pick the mix. I personally like a mix of oak, chestnut, maple, poplar, and gum because of the varying densities. I can throw logs on for different reasons at different points in the fire. And also, we're not going to talk about, or we didn't talk about it in this video, but we're talking about using wood to smoke barbecue. I throw those same exact logs into the big green egg, and they actually fit in a big green egg, and the grate can go on top. And so you can actually smoke wood with logs that you use for your fireplace. And then we've had customers throw those things into offset smokers and high efficiency smokers as well. So I like the variety because I use firewood in my fireplace and fire pit, and I also use it to smoke meat and in the pizza oven. So it's good for me to have different woods so that I can try out different smoke profiles and flavor profiles and whatnot. But also, it just so happens that those hardwoods are very common where I live, and so that makes for a really nice mix. The local mix where I am is going to vary from the local mix where you are, but I do think that a mix is a nice thing to have, but oak is common all over the country, and so you are going to have a high chance of finding oak firewood wherever you live. Hopefully you enjoyed as much as I do, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye!